Live from Los Angeles to stations up and down the West Coast and nationwide on iHeart Radio. This is KLEAN Radio, and it starts right now.
Thank you, Rand DeWitt. I'm Pat O'Brien. It's March Madness here on KLEAN Radio, and thanks for joining us tonight. Andrew Spanswick is here, of course, and back from a road trip. Hi, Andrew.
Hey, Pat. How you doing?
I'm great. We have a great guest tonight, Barbara Angelis. I'm not going to say old friend, but it's weird to say soulmates, but we are. We'll get to her in a minute. She's written, I think there's been about 500,000 books written about inspiration. She's written 250,000 of them, and they're all good.
Or that people copied her.
Yeah, everybody copied her. I tried to copy her. There's a reason why. Welcome to KLEAN Radio. We're all over Facebook, facebook.com/KLEAN Radio. On Twitter, @KLEAN Radio. Andrew's Twitter is @KLEAN CEO.
Which you really don't like.
No, I'm getting used to it, except
Really?
I want your name out there.
Okay.
And mine is, some moron got my name, so mine is @Pat, what is mine? @POB Pat O'Brien. POB Pat O'Brien.
Imagine Spanswick, though. I mean, @ Andrew Spanswick? Nobody would ever be able to spell it. It would be like nobody would ever tweet me ever.
That's like the guy on MSNBC. If you can spell Spurkanish, you can find me or something like that. Anyway, welcome to the show. We're all up and down the West Coast. We're in the Midwest. We're coming to the East and the South, and we're growing by the week. Our call-in number is like calling our number, 800-222-5222. There couldn't be an easier number. Well, if it was all twos, it'd be easier, right?
That's
so
true.
Pretend it's all twos and put a 5 in the middle.
There you go.
800-222-5222. We also have a call to action line. In other words, if you hear something on the show, and today's a good day to call, by the way. If you hear something on the show, you can always call our 24/7 hotline, which is 888-601-6040. Well, a lot of things to talk about today. Before we get to Barbara, just a quick overview. This is the Final Four for you sports fans was announced today. It's Kentucky, Villanova, Duke, and Wisconsin. If you're making out your brackets, there's a possible 9.2 quintillion chances. In other words, none. That's I think that's 18 zeros.
That's a lot.
Of getting it right.
Yeah.
And I'll just give you, having done the Final Four and the March Madness for 10 years, here's what happens. Put 2 of the top 4 seeds in your Elite 8,
Right.
and at least 1 in your Final Four. Last 25 years, it's never been wrong.
Huh.
So I'll make it easy for you now. There are no upsets. Don't think, okay, this guy's... No, don't do that. Take it from me. I know the deal.
Or don't gamble.
Well, yeah, they say there's going to be 12, and that brings me to you, Andrew. This is a couple big stories here. One is that $12 billion will be gambled this week. And I wanted to ask you about the new gambler, because you get these office pools. Is that a trigger, or is that just a 2-week deal, do you think?
Yeah, I think
everybody gambles.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, gambling, it's funny in our culture, like gambling versus like prostitution, and they used to sort of be like in the same sort of pale. And now gambling's become so normalized through states adopting more and more legalized gambling, starting with the lotteries, of course. Although people should know their history, and that is that there didn't used to be taxes. There used to only be lotteries. So there weren't formal state taxes or federal taxes. There were only lotteries held to raise money for the government. So it's kind of interesting now that we've kind of turned the cycle, and now we have taxes and lotteries. Great.
Also a big week. Yeah, really. Yeah, great is right.
Right.
Also a big week because it's St. Patrick's Day this week. And that brings up a lot of drinking. That's the same thing as the gambling for the Final Four. It's people that are new that suddenly decide to binge drink for a couple of days.
And I think that's an interesting thing where you get people that are, using...
They're not just Irish, by the way.
Yeah, most of them aren't actually, right? So, but it's interesting where you get a situation where people are abusing alcohol and they're abusing gambling. So people, that's a sort of polyaddictive use of both action, a type of process addiction like gambling, and then also a substance abuse addiction like alcohol. And they feed into each other, obviously. Getting drunk, lowering your inhibitions, making foolish decisions, and then also drinking and, not really recognizing the ramifications of the gambling. And those two are an awful little spin for some people.
And don't a lot of people, we'll get to our guest in 2 seconds here, don't a lot of people delay, let's say, rehab or recovery because of certain milestones. Like, I'm going to wait till after St. Patrick's Day, or I'm going to wait till after the Final Four, or I'm going to wait till after the football game. I've had people say to me, I don't want to stop drinking during football season.
There's actually a correlation between the number of people that come to get into treatment and dates like, the holidays or whatever. But the funny thing is that it actually peaks right before. Most people try to stretch into like a holiday or to a birthday or to something like the Final Four or to the Super Bowl. And a lot of people can't make it. So they'll get sober actually before that date that they've sort of picked.
Well, it's 10 years ago today, my downfall.
Yeah?
10 years ago, right about now.
It's a big day for you.
Some blackout in New York City. Our guest tonight is Barbara Angelis, and you know her because you probably read one of her books. If you haven't, you've seen her on television, or you've heard her, or you've seen her picture. She's gorgeous. Oh, that's sexist, isn't it?
No, I'm gorgeous.
Is it, Barbara?
You're gorgeous. Come on, Pat.
I just turned 64, so if you call me gorgeous, it's a wonderful compliment.
You don't look 64.
I think Pat was actually searching for a compliment, but
You were searching.
yeah, he was trying to.
I got a lecture
He
from him
wasn't searching.
earlier today. Barbara has got her new book. It's called Soul Shifts, which I read the last couple nights and underlined a lot of stuff in it. But she also read, one of my favorites was How to Make Love All the Time, and I've tried to do that. Chicken Soup for the Couple's Soul. Passion. She knows the deal on vibrational changes in your life and how to do that. Anyway, Barbara, how are you?
I'm really thrilled to be here.
Thank you.
Thrilled to be here with you. I'm thrilled to be on a program dedicated to wakefulness and consciousness and actually uplifting the vibration on the planet. I really congratulate you guys on what you're doing, especially in this industry where it's not always popular to do or say or stand for the right thing. So I'm really honored to be here.
But don't you find, thank you, and on behalf of Andrew, thank you.
Thank you.
You want to say thank you on your own?
Yeah, I can do it. Yeah.
Okay.
Is this Penn and Teller?
It's definitely more.
It's going to be.
By next week.
How does, and it all kind of fits in because Andrew and I talk about this a lot on the show, and that the way you feel inside really is the way you come across outside a lot. And the way you feel inside is why you eat or drink or gamble or whatever. And, we're never going to do this in the time that you're going to be here. If we had 5 hours, maybe. But your deal is that it's already in you, right? You just got to find the vibe.
There's
help is already there.
There's actually nothing missing in anyone. But we have disconnected many times from our source, our power, our love, whatever it is. Why do we disconnect? I know you guys talk about this all the time. We disconnect our circuits because we grow up with pain. We grow up because we feel disempowered. We grow up because there's things that we don't like that are happening to us or around us. So we kind of pull out the circuitry of feeling, seeing, knowing. And the problem is when you turn yourself off to survive, and it is survival, you don't even know you've done it, and you forget to turn it back on. And so you start operating as an adult, and a lot of your circuitry to your own power, wisdom, and that fullness inside that makes us feel loved gets turned off. Then, because we're not plugged into the big circuit, whatever you want to call it, God, spirit, we feel empty. Then because we feel empty, we want to feel a high for a moment. We want to feel a numbness to that emptiness. Then we get into addiction. So the source of all of it really has to do with that disconnection. And as you know, when people reconnect, and that's a hard journey, things begin to happen. They're willing again, not just to not be doing, people don't understand recovery. By the way, I just want to do a disclaimer. I've had, lots of addictions to love, helping people, but I myself have never gone through an addiction. However, I've, of course, helped so many thousands of people. One of the things people don't understand is when they're not, doing a substance or they're deciding to be in recovery, they're really recovering from that disconnection. And the truth is, in that way, everyone should listen to this program because everybody is in recovery. All of us are in recovery from our disconnection with the highest. And what we use to mask that, that's, could be alcohol, it could be drugs,
How
whatever.
do you explain, the large number of, evangelistic preachers that end up becoming, alcoholics and sex abusers?
I can totally, because they're what I call vibrationally wobbly.
Okay.
There's a lack of vibrational credibility.
Can you explain vibrational for me? Because I don't
vibrational
think anybody else would know
means that all of us and everyone listening has this experience. You meet somebody And in 2 seconds, you like them, you don't like them. You trust them, you don't trust them. What's happening? You're actually tuning in to their vibration. All of us are just matter vibrating. Right. And in the same way that everything has a radiation, or if we took a polygraph test, just a thought has a vibration and creates a difference in our body. Everything we're doing, in the 60s and 70s, we said, you have good vibes or bad vibes. But the truth is, physics tells us we're vibrational beings. Every thought, every action, everything we've ever done creates kind of a vibrational climate. So when people come into our atmosphere, they feel us. We don't have to say anything. 2 seconds. Like you, don't like you. Trust you, don't trust you.
Yeah, but isn't that countertransference?
No.
So what's the difference?
That is actually us tuning in and feeling the energy of somebody else. That energy shifts as we shift. So, your original thought is, why do people disconnect? We disconnect because there's pain we don't want to feel. And the problem is we're walking around numb and not seeing things, then we get into trouble. It's really that simple. And, I have a saying, what you see, you can shift. What you can't see, you can't shift. And the thing is that a lot of people in our society, not just people who've had an addiction, have decided to not see. They put the blinders down and, it's like, I don't want to see it, et cetera. I have a mantra or a prayer or an intention in the book that I've helped a lot of people, both in recovery and just recovering from life. Today, I am going to see what there is to see, feel what there is to feel, and to know what there is to know. The opposite of the soul shifts mantra is most people. Today, I'm not going to see anything I don't want to see. I'm certainly not feeling anything uncomfortable, and I don't want to know anything that's going to bother me. This is how most people live.
Well, and Barbara DeAngelis is here. A good time to call in, by the way. Our number is 800-222-5222. Aristotle said that we are what we repeatedly do. And William James says we are what we think. So we are what we are? Is that the deal? And is it hard to change it? Or do we drink to become, Andrew, somebody else?
It's
I know I drank to feel happy.
We tell ourselves it's to be happy, but it's actually to not feel unhappy. Who people are when they're in an addiction or of any kind. And it could be an addiction that we can identify as one, or it could be an addiction, for instance, for those people listening, to people-pleasing, to becoming successful. Whatever it is that runs us, when we're doing that, it's because we're afraid of what we're going to feel if we don't do that.
Right, and that's the problem with, and that's why I see so many, this is my problem, by the way, was that I'm in a business where you need to be loved by strangers, and you have no control over that. I succeeded at it because people liked me, and I stayed on the air 30 years. I'm on the air 35 years. But, I think most people, when you see quote-unquote celebrities, Andrew, it's because their addiction is not only to their addiction, but their addiction is to an addiction they can't see. They want people to love them all the time. Go to a movie, read my book.
There's a lot of different causes for these things, and it depends on your approach of looking at how these develop. A lot of people believe these things develop pre in the fetus time of life and development, and then all the way through childhood. And generally, most of our things that command our attention and drive us towards some sort of action, or even if it's pathological and bad for us, are generally you can trace to some sort of motivation that occurred early in childhood. So,
well, we're programmed by the time we're 5 years old.
And you're pretty much done by 5, and until
you're actually
then you're changing from.
You're not, but you're not done. There's a percentage that's left over for choice. And to me, I say in Soul Shifts, choice is the highest spiritual practice.
Well, let's talk about
each moment you can choose and choose and choose. You may not be able to choose for a month or a year, and this goes back to, of course, the idea of one day at a time. You can.
You both say, and you and I have never talked about this, Andrew. You both say that. You're programmed by 5, but then isn't that parenting? Because it's your parents who are.
Well, it's a huge part of it, obviously.
It's a part of it, but there's. I have my own views on it from my own experience and my own teaching for decades. I think there's genetic programming. I think there's programming that goes beyond what we get from our parents, that comes through grandparents and great-grandparents, through our historical, cultural programming that we don't feel. I think men just tuning into the cosmic maleness. There's programming that happens even before we're born, and some people, if you believe spiritually in other lives, you could say you come in with that. You sometimes can look at twins, and you can ask parents, and they are born with totally different dispositions immediately upon birth. There's no scientific explanation for that at all.
Well,
and so these are just lots of different things.
Science
you don't
isn't
have
there
to
necessarily to
believe.
explain everything. It's an attempt. Science is an attempt to explain
That's
everything, right? And scientific method actually states that we don't necessarily know the answer to everything. We're always trying to disprove our theory.
Well, I want to go, but
So-
what Pat said was really brilliant, though, which is the idea that we're looking for something or someone on the outside that's going to make us feel better from moment to moment, which is a dead end process. And it all does come back to healing and reconnecting that relationship with ourselves. It's impossible. Otherwise, we're going to walk around constantly and chronically disappointed in everybody.
Yeah, the problem is, Andrew, there's no dead end sign, right? If I'm having a problem, or anybody, both of you, to me, a drink seemed like a good idea, and to be honest with you, it worked for a while.
Yeah,
You know?
I mean, look, a lot of this I think is semantics. I mean, we know from science that there's genetics that people are born with. People are born with instincts just like a bird. How does a bird know how to hatch out of an egg? It doesn't. It has instincts that come from years and years of information that's been passed down through DNA, through reproduction. So, that's a very clear example. Human beings are extremely complex. We're finding out more and more as research goes on and on that there's more and more instinctual basis to our behavior. So you have a genetic predisposition in which there's a lot of base instinctual behavior that exists. But then once you're born, and even before you're born, when you start sensing things and the world starts affecting you, you have what are called epigenetic responses. So your genes, there's some genes that can be turned on and off based on exposure to different environmental sensory experiences. And so that's why you see variations even in twin studies. A lot of those have to do with epigenetic responses, not genetic responses.
The thing that I find really, and it's been the most important foundation for my work as a transformational teacher and work with so many people, is that actual transformation on any level has to happen on the inside for the outside to shift. Otherwise, you become playing a game of what I call emotional whack-a-mole, which is also really what addiction is, which is a bad feeling comes up, you whack it down.
Right.
Whether you're whacking it down with alcohol or drugs or people-pleasing, it doesn't matter. And the problem is you can't whack all those moles down all the time.
Well, guess who puts those bad feelings in your mind? You do. Not you, but
it's
I mean.
we have a misinterpretation of reality, and I think I started doing this work in 1970 something,
Right.
and what I feel hopeful about is the idea that in 2015, the idea of consciousness, personal growth, this kind of thing exists so that people can actually, as opposed to labeling themselves and feeling a lack of compassion, understand that there's a journey they have to take as a human being.
Right. Well,
and that was not the way it was.
I'm a huge believer in collective unconscious and collective consciousness. I mean, and there's a reason that why I say, like in comics and comedians will come up with a similar type of jokes at the similar time, because we're all operating in a society with a lot of inputs that are all
That's
the
right.
same. So everybody sort of has a collective unconscious of knowing if they're conscious at all, right? And that actually affects our behavior. We see it in fashion. We saw huge increases in anorexia in males when Calvin Klein in the 80s actually started advertising men's underwear. I mean, that we saw a dramatic increase, a disease we'd never seen really in men, very rarely, all of a sudden became quite prominent.
See,
So-
you know what I feel though? You're absolutely right. However, those energetic climates that pass through, to me, the reason they affect us so much is you can say they do affect us, that's a fact. Why do they really affect us that much? And that's because most people do not have an inner anchor. Most people are defining themselves by constant external accomplishments as opposed to what I call soul accomplishments.
But also, advertising is very good at triggering what
But it
we
doesn't
think,
trigger everybody. See, that's the
but
that's,
it triggers
that's the
large
point.
amounts of the market.
It does. It does.
That's the purpose of advertising, is to
But-
convince people that they should buy a product by,
I agree.
by somehow connecting to them emotionally,
Of course it
psychically,
does.
or
And that's
or
the
intellectually.
problem. But
Yeah.
I'm saying there has been an increase in the last 3 decades of people who are defining themselves much more internally than externally, who are not responding in the same way to those things, because those things are always going to be there. There's people always going to be trying to just move everybody like lemmings. But for each person, the real issue is, what journey are you on? What's the purpose of your life? What are you here for? Are you living and feeling the fullness of yourself? How can you reconnect to that so that whatever it is, advertising, your friend, you get hooked up with the wrong person, is not throwing you over, and you have an anchor inside that nothing and no one can take away from you, because they will try to take it away from you. You're absolutely right.
When I said you put those thoughts in people's, I meant we put our own bad thoughts in our head, not Barbara. Just want to make sure
I put good thoughts in
No, you do.
people's
You do very good thoughts. Barbara DeAngelis is our guest. Give us a call if you have a question first. Can be here for a little bit. 800-222-5222. When should a person, since this show is about recovery, from anything, when should they decide to get help, to go to rehab, to call a hotline? At what point do we even know that? If we do that,
I think that one of my pet peeves is, and I have dealt with this with a lot of people who come to study with me, who say and you know this, I'm not an alcoholic because I have a great job and make a lot of money, et cetera, or whatever it is.
Not
to
for
me,
long.
You're right. Anytime we realize that we're needing something to disconnect from how we're feeling or to create an artificial feeling of something, and that if we don't have it, we get nervous, whether it's minor or major, that's the time to at least begin the process of contemplation. You may not need, if it's just having a glass of wine every night, but you can never not have it, and you've never had sex without having a drink, but you're not, you're controlling it. That still, to me, needs consciousness and it needs exploration before, as you said, it gets to somewhere else. And it may never get to somewhere else. But does that mean someone's not addicted? You see, this is something I have many people who've come to me and said, I'm not an addict, and I only do this. I said, but what happens if you don't do it?
Well, people can engage in compulsive behavior. The question is, what are the ramifications in their life? What are the consequences?
The consequences are no matter minor or major. To me, the consequence is the same, which is we know we're out of control, even when we tell ourselves we're in control.
Well, you want what you want, but you get what you get, and deal with it, right?
Well, the problem is that most people are so unconscious of what's going on inside that and this is, I think, answer your question, when do people get help? One of the very fine lines for people is when they start to look and start to do self-reflection, as you know. The first thing that's going to happen is they're going to see things they do not want to see. And then they're going to experience shame. And then they're going to experience, oh my God, I'm way worse than I thought. And that's a pivotal point. Because at that point, if there's enough love and support, then they can go through a process of a rebirth. If not, they're going to feel worse than before they started looking. And there's a point when people are transforming, and I talk about it in Soul Shifts and I teach about it, when people need to understand that it's going to look worse before it looks better. That when we've had blinders on and we start to look at our life, or when the light's been out and we turn the light on in a room and we see all the things that are hidden under the drawers or under the bed, we're going to have an you-know-what moment. But after that moment, we have to know that what has hurt us in our life, and I'd say this to everyone listening right now or anyone listening who's there trying to help someone else, what has hurt us more in our life? What we have not seen and not looked at, or what we have seen? And it's everything. It's what we haven't seen. Everyone listening can say, I didn't see it, and it screwed me over. What we see may hurt, but it will not kill us. What we don't see will kill us.
The best thing I ever learned from a good friend of mine, Monsignor Jake, who was Pope John 23rd, the good Pope, as assistant. I said, what happens when you die? He said, well, you better get to know yourself because you're alone in that coffin. That's the best advice you can give anybody. Barbara DeAngelis, can you stay for a couple more minutes?
I can stay as long as you want.
She's right here. I'm Pat O'Brien, Andrew Spanswick. We're all here. See you in a minute. Or we'll be back in a minute. Don't go away.
Are you addicted to drugs or alcohol, but unable to commit to an inpatient rehab stay? Introducing KLEAN Treatment Center's Outpatient Treatment. This drug and alcohol treatment program is designed specifically for the working professional. Don't let your commitments of running a business, taking care of a child, or maintaining your college classes get in the way of your recovery from addiction. With daytime, evening, or individualized programs, KLEAN's Outpatient Treatment will fit your life. Call now for a free screening. Professional guidance is standing by.
Hi, everybody. I'm Pat O'Brien. Hello, YouTube. Thanks for joining the KLEAN Radio channel. Be sure to subscribe and get weekly episodes and clips. And comment, like or dislike, whatever. Be nice. We respond to everything.
Now back to Los Angeles. This is KLEAN Radio.
Welcome back. Pat O'Brien, Andrew Spanswick with us. And this is St. Patrick's Day week. By the way, St. Patrick was a rich Brit.
Yeah.
He was not Irish to begin with.
Well, you know, it's kind of a big muddle over there.
And and he didn't drive out any snakes.
Right.
There's a little picture of him here. And you don't have to drink. And, of course, all the Irish immigrants that came to New York City.
Right, he wasn't Dionysus.
Here's
right?
my commentary. All my forefathers came to New York and built St. Patrick's Cathedral and all these buildings and then weren't allowed to go in them. So there's always been this.
Well,
maybe that's why. And by the way, not every Irishman drinks.
That's
Good
classism
chance,
as well
but
as
not everyone drinks.
a lot of classism there as well.
We were talking about trigger. Barbara DeAngelis is here, and we were talking about triggers earlier. Don, you're calling from Seattle, and you want to ask a question about triggers, right?
Yeah. Thank you for taking the call.
Sure.
No problem.
I guess my main question is, what is your immediate steps that you might take? I don't know if it's breathing or what it is, when you realize that you come across the trigger and you kind of lose all control.
Can you give us a direct example, Don, of what you've been going through?
Okay. Personally, I've been on a spiritual walk for a while, and sometimes I will get in an environment where there are certain types of, I don't know how you say it, authoritarian type figures who will, for whatever reasons, I could say maybe ego or whatever, they cannot stand anybody to ask a question without feeling threatened, and they immediately launch into what I consider intimidation tactics to get people in line, and it triggers me so fast because I've been through that.
Well, that's authoritative power, so you're getting triggered by authoritative power.
Cut in front of the line.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, there's
what I do.
appropriate authoritative power and there's inappropriate authoritative power. And then probably you're having your own, issues with authoritative power. So in work, there's proper ways to handle authority and ways that the government deems are actually not appropriate, and that's called harassment.
Right.
So, I don't know. How's our guest?
But you're having...
Thanks, Don. Barbara, you answer that.
He's having what I call an emotional flashback, which is where you're experiencing something that is literally recreating something in your brain, neurons that fire together, wire together. So he's not in present time at that moment. In present time, he might be, for instance, Andrew gave a very intellectual, philosophical, wise and steady example. Oh, well, this guy, but he's having an emotional reaction to it because he's not there. He's 5, he's 4, he's wherever he is. The more we understand those things and understand, the details of those triggers, because what I hear with him is he knows the beginning of it. Somebody triggers me, it drives me crazy,
well, I think,
but he doesn't understand why.
I've always thought that Buddhists really had a good example of this with hooks and bait, right? That, different people know how to trigger people or hook them if you substitute hook for trigger, right? The question is, how do you, wait, hold on, let me finish. Right? How do you choose not to bite the hook, right? And I think that's a lot of what this is about, is self-awareness, being actually cognitively able to understand what's going on in the world, and knowing that, look, there's all these hooks out there that if I go for that bait, there's going to be a hook in there, and I'm going to get caught.
And it's a lot easier if you have consequences going into it.
But a lot for me, you really have to actually intellectually, whether, there's nothing wrong with being intellectual, first of all. And, I think it's important that you intellectually understand what's going on in the world around you. And we do that with cognitive behavioral therapy. I think that's one good way to do it. I think a lot of what you're talking about, you could probably shift most of your ideas and thoughts and beliefs and the way you reterm things into cognitive behavioral therapy terms, and it would probably be pretty much the same thing.
We can help you with all of this. If you have a question, 888-601-6040. That's our 24/7 hotline over at the KLEAN Center, and there's always somebody there to answer your call. Sherry, all the way in New Jersey, disagrees with Barbara and Andrew.
Hello.
Hey, Sherry.
Go ahead, Sherry.
Good. I actually don't disagree. Barbara DeAngelis made a great point. I felt that, when you talked about the idea of our programming ends at age 5, there are influences from our family, but, the idea that we can't choose and shift throughout our life, I really appreciated the comment that Barbara DeAngelis made about that, and wanted to say from my own experiences of addiction throughout my life in all different ways, whether with substances or behaviors, it all really came down to choice. So I just really wanted to acknowledge that and appreciate that comment there, because it really leaves us open to having some control in our lives to really be able to shift things and live the lives that we want to live. So that was my comment. I really appreciated it.
All right, thanks, Sherry. Thank you, Sherry. Sherry calling from her new kitchen, it sounded like.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's. I think that was somewhat misinterpreted, and that's probably my fault for not really describing what I was saying properly. But that being said, clearly people are developing their whole lives. The question is how much. What we're talking about imprinting, and basically when where most of your cognitive and emotional development starts, and then what do you do from there? Certainly, that isn't. It isn't. You don't go to that period of 5 and then you're stuck with whatever you're stuck with. But it is more challenging to change as you get older, and certainly there is a huge period of development we call adolescence, and there's the adolescent brain where the frontal lobe develops, and then we understand more and more about actually how to make decisions and how to control our behaviors. So it's not really an issue of this or that. It's just trying to understand more about the importance of child rearing, of taking care of infants prenatally, and also understanding about how that affects behavior ongoing as you become an adult and you have questions and you wonder where these feelings are coming from, and they don't seem rational. And a lot of the reasons that these feelings don't seem rational is because they're coming from your subconscious. They're coming from things that you don't remember when you're an infant and a child, or even prenatally.
You know, Barbara DeAngelis is here, and you use the word vibration about, well, that's what the book's about, but use it, 30 times a page. And I like that, but because everybody has, let's say, for example, your parents get divorced at a young age. Is that a negative vibration that is so difficult to get past?
It's not. That's not a vibration. That's an experience, and then we make certain conclusions about that. My parents were divorced when I was very young, and we either conclude we didn't do something right, we side with one parent energetically, we see who's the one who looked like they were in power, and we either decide to be like them or not. There's so many things that can happen. I think the most important thing is everybody is traumatized. In a sense, everybody has gone through something in life.
Life is traumatic.
Life is traumatic. Childhood's traumatic.
It's unfair, too.
My contention has been, doing this for a long time, I'm such a believer in the power of people to rebirth themselves. I've seen it over and over. I've helped people do it. You guys are helping people do it.
What does rebirth mean? It means
literally recreate the way we're thinking, interpreting information, acting, and what we're sourcing from inside of us. I've seen and taken people who had such a negative self-esteem about themselves. We're so not wanting to experience life.
Is that sort of like, I guess, being baptized?
No.
Or born again?
No, not at all.
What's the difference?
We are all, well, anyone listening, for instance.
I think it's looking at something another way, right?
But
it's
isn't
not
that the
just
whole concept of and born again, that you have a spiritual awakening? And then
I'm not
you change
using it in those
yourself?
terms. I'm saying
That's in a
anybody,
structured religious.
Yeah. No, I'm saying
Well,
anyone,
this is too, right?
anyone listening, for instance, who used to be afraid of intimacy and now loves intimacy. Anyone listening who didn't have confidence and suddenly now has built a business. They've rebirthed themselves. They've rebirthed their way of looking at life. They've rebirthed their confidence. And I feel that all of our obligations as conscious beings is to rebirth ourselves over and over again.
When you identify somebody, let's say it's a woman with a pill problem, and I know there's probably some over there. I don't know why I probably shouldn't say that, but I'm sure you've come across some.
About half of our patients are.
I know, but I mean, how do you break the it's not what's the first thing you do, but how do you tell them they're in a chain that can be broken?
Yeah, I don't think that's the first thing that we do. For us, it's about joining with clients at first. So meeting them where they are, helping them with whatever trauma they're dealing with at the time, which is normally brought on from their addiction, then dealing with detox, and then what feelings start to arise. So this is a long-term process. It's not like there's just one thing that you just say and approach. It's something that takes a period of time. It's a developmental sort of stage process of getting people from completely unconsciously sick from addiction to cognitively aware of what's going on in their lives and being open to their world around them and dealing with their problems in an effective way and having a fulfilling life.
All over the country, people are listening. From New York City, Anita, you're on the air. I want to ask Barbara a question or talk to her. Go ahead, Anita.
Oh, no. Thank you so much, Pat. What a wonderful show tonight. And so needed in our world right now. So I just wanted to comment and thank Dr. DeAngelis for writing such an amazing book in Soul Shifts. I just have, I finished it last week, and for anybody who has addiction or just wants to really find their heart, it's such an amazing book. So I'm just so thankful and so touched by it. So just wanted to comment. That's all.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Anita,
That's
from
so
New York
sweet of
City,
you.
all over the country tonight.
Yeah,
And
just been out for
why
a
you
few
wrote
weeks,
it.
so it's nice to hear that from people.
And it's out.
Awesome.
You can get that. I just always say go to Amazon, right?
Amazon.
Because there's no more bookstores.
Or you can go to my website, then you get free gifts.
What's your
with it.
website?
BarbaraDeAngelis.com. And there's all kinds of stuff there. There's free meditations and
Free gifts.
inspiration, free gifts.
What do I get?
I like free gifts. I don't know.
I've already got the gift of desperation, which got me sober. So that's one thing. But let's just put
that had a really big price tag, though.
Yeah.
Not that. I mean, the price tag was here I am.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the payoff.
Yeah.
I feel like you're picking on me today.
I'm not. Everybody feels like I'm picking. It's my job to pick on people.
Tried Buddy Totten again. Does your mic work yet?
I think so.
Okay, there you go.
Buddy's
Hey,
here.
how's it going?
Good.
All right, so this is what's happening on Facebook.com/Clean Radio and on Twitter @Clean Radio. First off, Josh says, I knew I needed help when I started to use when I woke up, and then it was the last thing I did before I went to bed. And then he comments, well, actually, I just passed out. He said, I couldn't pay my bills because it all went to the dope man. And he's asking you, Pat, when did you first know that you needed help?
When I was lying,
Lying flat, yeah.
Actually, I never could, and Andrew and I have talked about this on the air and off. I didn't really think I needed help. I was too big for the room, and grandiosity played in that. And so my alcoholism really didn't kick in until I was 55.
Okay.
But it wasn't until 6.23 years ago that I finally realized lying face down on the beach after drinking more than a dozen bottles of wine and near death, 0.42, and 130 pounds. And I thought, well, maybe it's time, right, Barbara?
Well, that's what I call the wake-up call.
And it was all over the news, and I'd do it publicly.
That helped.
Right.
But
some people need more of a message than others.
Yes, but I want to say publicly what I said to you privately, which is you're an old soul. And I do believe that old souls many times have very intense karmic lessons that turn them into something different that actually helps uplift people. And the truth is that you always were entertaining and wonderful, et cetera, but you've been making a big difference in people's lives now. So what it took to get you there, to turn you into a supporter, a teacher, and a healer in a sense, and to partner up with somebody so wonderful, was trauma, et cetera. But what's coming out of it is saving people's lives. And I applaud you for that, because a lot of people can go through recovery and then just hide out. It was public, but you had a choice. You could have still done it in the way many people do it. You have not. You've committed to something, and you've put yourself completely on the line. I really honor you and both of you for that.
Thank you. And I thank Andrew for giving me the opportunity. Not sure he's happy all the time that I'm here. Buddy, one more. No, it's a great opportunity, and I love it. And we're
I think
growing.
the important thing about that call, Pat, is that no matter what your bottom is or how horrible it is or even how small it is, it doesn't have to be big and torturous. Right. That it can, that listening to the show and realizing that you have a problem is enough to know to get some help. And whether that be just talking to someone or whether that be a full admission to a rehab, either way, the whole message is about hope, and the message is about that you don't have to feel pain or cover up pain without dealing with it. There's so many people in the world that want to be there for everybody, and it's just connecting with those people, and you'll be fine.
You find out who your real posse is when you get sober and start working on it.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Buddy, one more? You got something else?
I do. Jennifer wants to know, what are some of the root issues that kept you using drugs, and how did you deal with them so you could get sober?
Do that again?
She wants to know what some of your root issues or your core issues were that drove your addictive behavior, and how did you deal with them so you could get and stay sober?
Too much money, too much spare time, too much fame, grandiosity, too good looking, too free,
right.
all that stuff. And I'm serious.
Yeah,
I mean,
but a lot of that, though, were things that you wanted. Right?
I worked for it.
Yeah, you worked hard and you wanted them. Yeah. So you were born and you had, as a child, you developed all these needs and wants for things to happen a certain way, and you were a huge overachiever. I mean, you read your book, it's unbelievable the things you've done. It's like you're like Forrest Gump plus, a smart Forrest Gump. So you got to be there and actually be aware that you were there. I mean, you've had an incredible career, incredible life, but that at the end wasn't enough to stop you from falling into the trap of addiction, which was covering up a lot of the things that you thought would be solved by making all those achievements. But yeah, those weren't the things that really you were missing from the beginning.
Yeah, I know that now, and that's the gift of desperation, right? And the gift of...
Well, none of the things that we get ever will really fill us up. You know, I talk the end of Soul Shifts about legacy. And most of us think, you know, I'll leave money to my kids, or I'll do this, or I'll write a book, or I'll have a bestseller. But the truth is that we leave a legacy every single day with how we love, with who we touch, who we uplift. And so many people, especially in our society, as you were saying, the last 20 years, the idea of fame, instant fame, you know, I have to have my own reality show to be anything. Little kids, when you ask them, what do I want to be when I grow up? They say, I want a reality show. Yeah, the pressure that if you're seen, you're somebody. If you're honored, you're somebody, is really disconnecting people from what life is about.
Yeah, for me, the best thing, I speak a lot, and I tell this to people, that the best thing you can do, the best reason to get sober is so your kids don't have to worry about you anymore. Period. Right. Quickly, buddy, one more.
Mary says, my husband is on his second DUI, and he always tells me I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. How do I convince him he needs help?
I don't want to even hear that one. Buddy, thank you very much. We'll answer that. Buddy,
okay,
thank
cool.
you.
You're welcome.
But yeah, that's denial. I mean,
that's
I'm not picking on the guy.
I mean, it's a classic case, actually. It's a great question in some ways because it's amazing. You know,
I hear it all the time.
Well, we do it all the time. That's what I was about to say. We do this all the time. So we're used to hearing stories like that and just like, it's like, oh, you're at the beginning. And, you know, that's sometimes when we talk about joining with people, joining with family members and joining with people in treatment, it's starting not the fact that I know everything about addiction or, you know, quite a lot, but it's starting with, I know that you don't understand the consequences of denying the fact that your drinking is causing you to get pulled over and you might kill somebody and you might kill yourself. And that's where we need to start. So with every patient and with every family member, you can't just treat the patient. You have to work with the family as well. And it's about starting with where they are. You cannot say, hey, listen to KLEAN Radio, and he's going to tell you that alcoholism is because of some genetic factor and the fact that you drink too much and it's a compulsive disorder. No, that's just too complex for most people.
And for you morons who go out on St. Patrick's Day and drive, please don't run over me and my family, or Barbara, or Andrew, or Patrick, or Rand, or anybody. The Oliver family out in Holton, Maine is watching tonight on KLEANradio.com. We're going to shout out to them. And now we're going to shout out to Joe out in New Jersey, who has a question for Barbara. Hello, Joe. How are you?
Good, Pat. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I appreciate you gentlemen having Barbara on.
Cool.
I echo what she just offered before, that you're actually real men. It takes a courageous man to take a look at and do this kind of work. You know, growing up, felt it was more about, you know, status and prestige and that puffing up male dominance energy. But as I've been studying from Barbara, and I just read her book too, which is amazing, I finally understand what she was talking about with vibration. And I was just going to ask if Barbara could talk a little bit more about that, because before that I was really unaware of how my vibration affected other people.
All right, so I think what you're asking is the vibrational aspect compared to an emotional one. Is it the same thing?
Well, I think just generically and quickly, most people, and you know, this is what Andrew was talking about too, about why treating families. Most people think if the wrapping paper is nice, they're not going to affect anybody. No one's going to see their pain. No one's going to see their anxiety. No one's going to see their anger or shame or whatever it is inside. People may not understand what they're seeing, but they feel it. And it throws them off. And that's what I talk about healing that stuff inside. Addict, not addict, whatever it is essential for us to be vibrationally credible. So what you see is who is really there. So who you are inside is also matching what the world thinks of you. And this is one of the reasons, and I write about this, I think a lot of celebrities, well-known people, tank themselves because the world starts honoring them, seeing them as amazing. I could list all the people that we know who we've watched crash. And so on the outside, everyone is saying, you are amazing. When somebody's not feeling amazing inside, there's a strange thing that happens in the brain where sometimes we try to get coherence. So people, I believe, unconsciously bring their lives down to match how they're feeling about themselves.
Well, some people are addicted to drama too, right?
Well, no, I think, I mean, I agree. I think that people do bring themselves down. And I think we see that a lot with people that because they become accustomed to what the life skills they have that allow them to live at a certain level. And you see this with people that will like somehow go back to prison immediately because they don't have the life skills to live outside of a prison, so they'll recommit a crime to go back to prison, when logically that doesn't make any sense that somebody would want to go back to prison. But I think we see this in everyone's lives. That's where if they get to the point where they've made an achievement and now all of a sudden all the places where they were safe and all the friends they had that were safe are missing because they've gone to a next level in their life or they're doing something different and they're not comfortable with that and they don't know how to adapt to that or they don't know how to deal with their friends in that new situation, then they're gonna actually self-destruct and bring themselves back down to a level where they feel comfortable. And
I call that vibrational resonance. You know, some people, if we're not feeling a worthiness, even if the world is seeing us as worthy, many times people will bring themselves back to a place of vibrational resonance with people, which is the problem when you're an addict hanging out with addicts, is it is harder to heal, recover, etc., which is again why what you're doing is so important.
Yeah, I mean, I like the term vibrational, you know, and I think that it's interesting, and I definitely think it's really important, and I think it's important that people understand that these things are achievable and easy to actually start learning the language of once you just start looking for them.
Absolutely.
And that you can actually make them very tangible.
And if you're a musician, as I am, you know that anything that vibrates can be tuned.
That's exactly right.
The thing. Now listen, I got dizzy. What do you mean now listen? Now listen to me. I got dizzy reading part of the book about how fast we're always moving. Can you run through that again?
How fast we're moving?
How fast the world is moving, that we're going how many miles?
Yes.
I mean, it's basic
that right
astronomy.
now we're actually going millions of miles an hour because the Earth is actually rotating, and then in our solar system is also rotating in our galaxy, and our galaxy is moving through the universe, and even though it feels like we're sitting still right now, we're going millions of miles an hour.
How come we don't get dizzy?
And the time it took me to say that, we've probably traveled about 10 million miles.
Unless you actually believe you're the center of the universe and then everything's moving around you.
That's like the first time you smoked dope back in the 60s. You said, God, the whole universe is on my fingernail. You know?
Well, it's really just, the idea of all of that is to just say that, you know, we are in a miraculous universe. We are miraculous, and we are all vibrating matter. And matter can change form. We can change form.
One quick thing. My dear friend Joe McDonald passed away Friday. He's 58 years old. Joe was a mainstay in Los Angeles sports. Just the greatest guy ever. However, this had nothing to do with him being great. He weighed 760 pounds at one point, and had it all taken off, and then just struggled with the whole deal, and couldn't get work. And you know, the last thing Don Martin over at Fox Sports said to him is, "Your career is over." And I'm pretty sure that might have not helped him a lot. But he always had confidence, and but he had that 760 pounds. What do you think? And the cause of death hasn't been told yet. He was 58. I'm surprised he lived to 58, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he had morbid obesity, and you know that has serious ramifications for your health. And there's a reason that you don't see a lot of people 700 pounds that are
walking
in their
around.
60s. Yeah, because it's the average length of your life, if you have that disease, unfortunately, is around late 50s. And actually for women, it's actually shorter. It's in the 40s. So, you know, this is just something, and once again, this is more of a public health issue of obesity. Obviously, intervention for obesity like that, we're starting to come up with more things. But you know, there's a reason for obesity, sometimes genetic, sometimes emotional. A lot of people are emotional eaters and they squash their feelings by just filling themselves up with food. The question is, when do we recognize obesity as a problem, and then how do we help it? And if you are grossly obese, does that mean you're destined to die at an early age, or is there something you can do about it? He was obviously desperate to try and do something about it and did lose a lot of weight. But that doesn't necessarily give you a get-out-of-jail-free pass. There's still a lot of damage done in the meantime. And that's what I say to drug addicts. They're like, oh, well, I'll just quit 5 years from now. I got 5 good years of using. And I'm like, every time you use a drug, you're causing a problem.
Right. I don't want to blame all that on Don, but a lot of people, he was trying to get work and couldn't get work. And that's what happens. Barbara, thank you so much.
Thank you guys for having me.
The book is Soul Shifts. With an S, Barbara DeAngelis, another one of her books. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Thanks.
Andrew, have a good week. I'll see you tomorrow. And for all of you out there for St. Patrick's Day, remember that, as John Lennon said, if you had the luck of the Irish, you'd wish you were dead. But have a good time anyway. See you next week.
Are you or someone you care about addicted to drugs or alcohol? Addiction ruins lives and destroys families. Bring an end to the pain and suffering by calling KLEAN Treatment Centers. KLEAN has helped people from around the world break free by not only treating the addiction, but the underlying causes and providing vital aftercare so people can get clean and stay clean with no gimmicks and no false promises. If you need immediate assistance or just have questions, call KLEAN Treatment Centers for guidance. A much better life awaits.